Hi, I'm Mike Reynolds, a senior reporter covering the media industry with the S&P Global Market Intelligence Tech, Media, and Telecom News Team. Welcome to MediaTalk, a podcast hosted by S&P Global, where the news and research staff explore issues in the ever-evolving media landscape. Today, I'm joined by a trio of S&P Global Market Intelligence Kagan analysts. Head analyst Justin Nielson, who specializes in broadcast among many other things. Principal analyst Scott Robson, who tracks U.S. TV networks and sports, and research analyst Michael Johnson, who's now in his sophomore year here on the U.S. Sports Watch. Today, we're going to talk about the 25-26 college football season. There are some changes, including revamping what will be the second season of the expanded CFP playoffs. Justin, week 0 is behind us, and we're ready to kick things off for real. You ready?
I'm ready. Yes, I'm definitely ready for football, especially college. I would say there are some changes afoot in terms of what could happen in future playoff scenarios, and we'll touch on that. But yeah, excited for the season.
All right, Mike, I know this is probably a riff on Monday Night Football lyrics from days of yours, but are you ready for some college football?
Yeah. Hey, Mike. Yeah. Thanks for having me on the podcast. I'm definitely ready. The last few weeks have been fun with more college football playoff debates and preseason media days. I'm excited to get the games rolling finally.
All right. Scott, you live in Austin, Texas, home to the number 1 ranked Longhorns and Arch Manning, nephew of Peyton and Eli. They're playing defending champion Ohio State in Columbus in the Horseshoe on Fox on August 30th. Exciting way to kick off the season, right?
Yeah, season really starts off with a bang this year with the rematch of last year's semifinal. I think there's a lot of pressure on Arch Manning and the Longhorns to get back to the playoffs this year. The 1 seed definitely places a target on them. I'll tell you what, whoever loses that game will instantly be in a hole, and it has the potential to really hurt team right off the bat. So very exciting.
All right. Dave Portnoy will now be part of the Big Noon Kickoff squad. The final game for Lee Corso is also on the agenda. I don't know, Pat McAfee or Nick Saban, are they ready to start donning the headgear mascots? Mike, your take on the battle of the pregame shows?
Yeah. So it seems like we have a bit of a rivalry building between College Game Day and Big Noon Kickoff. Dave Portnoy, like you mentioned, is going to be joining the Big Noon team. It'll be interesting to get the response from his pro-Michigan takes. But last year, College Game Day, they set a record. I think it was 2.2 million viewers on average last year. And it seems like both networks are really going all out to claim that top spot among the pregame shows. Plus, we have the ACC network getting in on the action too with their ACC huddle. I think they're going to be broadcasting from the different campuses of the biggest games of the week. And then we have SEC Nation, Big Ten Tailgate. So there's going to be a lot of different options. But I'm going with Pat McAfee to rock the mascot heads. He seems a little bit better suited for the role.
Okay. All right. Before we dig further into the upcoming campaign, let's review last year big conference realignments with the Big Ten and SEC and the expanded CFP. Scott, give us a sense for last year's playoff and viewership, if you will.
Yeah, I think the extended playoff was well received last year. With the first round games, we're averaging over 10 million viewers across ESPN and TNT Sports. And then the latter rounds brought in around 20 million viewers. It's a bit of a mixed bag, though, as viewership for the 2 semifinal games was down 17% compared to the prior year. I don't know if that speaks to the scarcity effect or just general interest in the matchups. If you look at it overall, the championship game brought in 22.1 million viewers and was the most watched non-NFL sporting event of the year. A lot of interest there.
Sure. Justin, your alma mater, the Arizona State, the Sun Devils, they were in the CFP last year. They made a run. Changes afoot with how the playoffs are going to be seeded from last season this time around?
Yes. So no automatic bids for the top 4 for the Big 4 conferences this year. So it's going to be the top 4 decided by committee. So it would make a change this year if Arizona State potentially wins the Big 12 again. They would have to be upwards in the rankings in terms of getting a top 4 spot. It is definitely something, that we're going to have some human element in terms of the conversation about who the top 4 is. And there could be 2 in the same conference, but you're going to get the loudest noise, I guess you would say, from the Big Ten and SEC folks.
Okay, some big news, guys, back in June, the NCAA and the House settlement. I want all 3 of you guys to weigh in here. Scott, can you start us off on this landmark decision?
Sure. Yeah. So it was a big win for the players in June. $2.8 billion was awarded to provide former and current D1 athletes who were restricted from NIL. Now these schools can pay athletes a share of revenues up to 20.5 million. I think it's really turning college sports into pro sports in a way. And I think these media rights deals are the driving force behind that change. I know there's some concerns that this will have a negative impact on competition, and we might see a lot more player transfers as they seek the most lucrative deals. The NCAA has a commission in place to monitor payments, so hopefully it doesn't get out of hand. I don't know if you guys saw that Notre Dame now has released different logos for different sports, but I think that move was made to increase merch revenue, and we might see more of this as college has become just increasingly revenue focused following the settlement.
Mike, your take on this? Again, that's an interesting point, Scott. So again, bigger and bigger business and perhaps more pro than ever before.
Yeah, wow. The settlement back in June is a big time game changer. Like Scott mentioned, D1 athletic departments can now pay student athletes with this new revenue sharing era. So it's huge. Like Scott mentioned, we're talking about $2.8 billion in damages for players who weren't allowed to collect the NIL deals before. And then the school can also dish out up to $20.5 million to current athletes. And I think that number is going to continue to go up over the next decade. It will be interesting to see how this kind of shakes out, especially since the football programs, I think they're expected to snag about 75% of those revenue sharing funds.
Okay.
Men's and women's basketball, they'll get a big chunk too, while other sports might not see as much. But you're seeing a lot of schools already making moves and looking into private equity investments for this shift.
Justin, Mike talked about most of the dollars is going to be funneled to football and then the basketball programs. But isn't that kind of money at over $20 million if someone wanted to take a different tack, and maybe you can build a program from a very nascent stage into a major contender with some of the other college athletics?
I would think so. And especially in some of the Olympic sports, you're definitely seeing that in certain cases. With Texas Tech, Najari Kennedy, the softball pitcher, just got a $1 million NIL deal. I think there's going to be more of this, especially in swimming, gymnastics, those big Olympic sports that get a lot of viewership in the summer and Winter Olympics. I definitely feel like there's potential for some of these schools to use that money in different ways, especially the rise of women's sports. So you may see certain schools in different conferences really lean into that growth in popularity of women's sport.
Yeah, it makes sense. More Lizzie Duns, perhaps. We will see. Anyway, ESPN and Fox are the big players in college football. Mike, can you give a sense for where Paramount, Skydance, CBS Sports stands?
Yeah, Mike, you're spot on that ESPN and Fox Sports are the big players in college football right now. As for CBS, they've had to adjust quite a bit after losing the SEC rights, which were a huge part of their lineup. I believe the SEC's new 10-year deal with ESPN is worth around $3 billion, which was a massive change from the previous CBS contract. CBS is still making moves, especially with the Big Ten during that 3:30 Eastern window, now in its third year. I think the Big Ten media rights agreement with Fox, CBS, and NBC is valued over $8 billion for 7 years, which is the largest media rights deal in college conference history. But that's not it. CBS also secured a 1-year media rights deal with the Pac-12 for this season, and it'll feature a mix of games that'll be broadcast, on CBS. The CW, I think, will have the majority of those games, and then ESPN also. And then they also now have a longer-term deal as well with the Pac-12 that was recently announced. I think it runs through the 2030-2031 season, with estimates suggesting it could be between $10 million and $15 million annually. And then additionally as well, CBS is also involved with the Mountain West, airing some of their games as part of their national package. So they're still finding ways to stay among the key players in the college football media rights game.
Yeah, and there's a lot of games on CBS Sports Network too, so we'll see. Scott, Mike talked about the Big Ten and NBC. Can you give us a little sense for what they're up to there? And they also have Notre Dame and Peacocks in the mix too.
Yeah, NBC has Big Ten primetime games throughout the regular season on Saturday nights. It works out to about 15 games per season. I think NBC just likes primetime football. They've got the NFL Sunday night game. I think this fits into their general strategy overall. Fox is the main Big Ten media rights partner, but NBC does have the Big Ten championship game in 2026. There are also 8 games exclusive to Peacock. And then if you look at the Notre Dame deal, so Notre Dame and NBC have a partnership that runs through 2029. NBC is paying about $50 million per year, and that's more than doubled over the previous contract. So I think the college football rights here definitely help make Peacock more appealing, which seems to be the primary focus for NBC, especially following the Versant spinoff.
Gotcha. I gotcha. Justin, again, we just talked about Peacock, but the streamers, the Netflix, the Amazon Prime Video, or Apple, none of these guys, as far as I know, have really entered the college football game realm. I don't know. Is there any room for them? Could that happen? Because I think the contracts are kind of locked up for a while.
Yeah, the contracts are locked up. And the other thing to focus in on is the regionality of some of these games. So you may see an opportunity for, like Netflix likes to do sports documentaries.
Right.
You may see a focus on a specific team for college or an athlete. I just don't think they're going to get into the major college sports in terms of streaming live games.
Yeah, that's a more of a national approach, you would think, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Other players here. TNT lost the NBA game rights after a 35-year run. It's been building up its portfolio with other sports, NASCAR, Unrivaled Women's 3-on-3 basketball, Roland Garros French Open tennis. They've got MLB and NHL. They've also bolstered their position in college football. Mike, can you get us up to speed on what TNT's up to?
Yeah, TNT, they're definitely making some interesting moves, like you mentioned. They're back in college football after taking a long break with the sport. They started showing that ESPN produced college football playoff broadcasts last year with Penn State over SMU and Texas over Clemson, I believe, in the first round. And it sounds like they're happy with how that went. They reportedly struck a deal to sublicense one more semifinal game from 2026 to 2028. And that means TNT will now have nearly half of the CFP broadcasts, including a couple first-round games, 2 quarterfinal games starting this year, based on how the CFP is currently structured.
Sure, which
Plus
we'll
they're
get
adding-
to that in a little bit later.
Yep. Plus, they're adding some Big 12 games to their lineup, too, with, I believe it's Hawaii, Arizona on August 30th.
All right. The CW, 75% owned by Nexstar, nation's largest owner of TV stations, which presumably is going to get even larger if its deal with Tegna gets approval. Justin, can you talk a little bit about CW? They've got a lot of other sports these days that they've come on nationally, and they're in the college football and college basketball games too.
CW has definitely put an emphasis on sports rights and sports programming. So you've got the Saturday college football pre-show. They will be doing the CW Football Saturday Countdown show, debuting September 30th. So it'll be produced along with the Pac-12 and ACC games on the network. And then Tom Brennahan will be back for the ACC games with Will Blackman and sideline analyst Wes Bryant. So you're going to see a lot more sports deals, I think, even with the tie-up with Tegna that Nexstar is going through. So I think the emphasis is definitely going to be on CW in terms of their programming, gaining access to not the primary sports rights, the secondary or third sports rights for some of these major events.
They've stepped it up and it works. And again, the last time I think they talked about 30 to 40% of their lineup now is sports oriented. So again, major shift from the CW of old.
Yeah.
All right. Yep. Let's stay out west a little bit. Scott, Scripps Sports and Big Sky, I think they just did a renewal.
So Scripps has a pretty strong regional hold in the West. They own and operate TV stations across Montana, Idaho, Colorado, etc. Scripps Sports, it was formed in 2022, and the deal with Big Sky Conference was the first sports media rights deal for the company. And since then, Scripps has been purchasing media rights to the WNBA, National Women's Soccer League on the national level, and then regionally, they've struck deals with some NHL teams. The Big Sky Conference isn't really a powerhouse by any means, but I think there is some attention there around games like the Montana versus Montana State matchup. It's important to note that ESPN Plus has the digital rights for these games. So we'll see how important those pan out to be.
All right. The other thing here, Mike mentioned it earlier, CBS has struck a primary rights deal with the Pac-12 covering the 2026 through 2031 seasons. But as we record this podcast, reports indicate that the CW is also nearing an announcement for its own Pac-12 deal that would also cover the 5-year period from 26 to 31. Last year, we talked about Venue, which is a proposed joint venture of ESPN, Fox, and Warner Brothers. It's supposed to be 14 sports-oriented networks for about $43 a month. It never got off the ground. legal challenges by Fubo TV. The party settled. Fubo is going to become integrated into Hulu Live TV with the Fubo execs running that. As of this recording, Fubo Sports, they have the rights to launch a sports-specific platform, but that hasn't happened yet. But we've had ESPN DTC and Fox Sports 1 both launch on August 21. Attractive products at $29.99 for ESPN, $19.99 for Fox One. They're going to bundle on October 2nd for $39.99. Justin, you're first here. What's your take on the two launches?
It's really interesting. You're definitely focusing on the sports fan, but at the same time, you have to bring out your calculator, right, and see how it compares to the pay TV package. Because in a lot of cases, if you're adding in the broadcast networks and the streamers as well, where are you at? Are you still in the $100 range in terms of paying for TV? So I'd be curious to see what the uptick is in terms of subscribers. You're definitely going to have those individuals that maybe don't have pay TV packages that look at this as an attractive product, at least seasonally. You may have additional churn because of that seasonality. I think ESPN and Fox are going to have to support that seasonality with programming throughout the off season as well.
Sure, Mike, to that end, again, I think the idea is that these products are going to be targeted to the folks that are not in the traditional TV bundle, or maybe younger guys, sports fans who have never been part of the pay TV situation. Is that where most of the action is going to occur? Or do you think maybe some guys are going to get out of the traditional bundle and buy these things instead?
Yeah. I think this new bundle, it could definitely appeal to the folks outside of the traditional pay TV universe. It is interesting because, like we mentioned before, ESPN and Fox are the major players in college football. And with the rise of the streaming and people looking for that simplified option, this DTC combo kind of offers that for college football fans, at least Justin mentioned seasonally. I think at $30 a month and Fox One at $20 a month isn't terrible, but when you bundle them together for $40, makes it a lot more appealing, in my opinion.
Scott, what's your take here? Are the launches of these products an accelerant for the further erosion of linear TV?
Cord cutting is over a decade old now in terms of what we've seen in pay TV subscriptions declining. And I think these services might have made a bigger splash if they launched a few years ago, but I don't think there are many pay TV subscribers that were waiting on these services to launch before cutting the cord. It seems like streaming services are going to be bundled and we'll end up with a similar video option to the big cable packages we've known in the past. But speaking to the services appeal outside of the bundle, early reviews mention a lot of clips being pushed on the services and it having a feel of almost a TikTok or YouTube Shorts type environment. So I think they are really going after those viewers that are outside of the bundle currently.
And as I think as Justin mentioned, you've got to get out your calculator and your checkbook and see how it maybe all adds up. We'll see. All right, guys, we're getting toward the end here. We're going into the second year of the 12-team college football playoffs. There's been a lot of expansion talk, 12 to 14, 12 to 16, and now the Big Ten is talking 24 to 28 teams. Scott, I know you weren't a fan. We've talked about this before, about expanding the 68-team March Madness fields for the men and the women. I can't imagine you're up for this.
College football has historically been plagued with a poor postseason schedule and format. There's always complaints. We're just in the second year of this expanded 12-team playoff, and I think it's a huge step forward. I think the 28-team playoff would diminish the value of the regular season, but I can see why Big Ten and Fox are introducing the idea because to them, it's more revenue.
Sure. Mike, is 24 or 28 teams, is that madness?
Yeah, I think it could definitely be seen as madness, especially if you think about how it could change the landscape of college football. But I think it would be exciting. You get those first round upsets and things along those lines. I know the Big Ten is really pushing for this, give a lot of automatic bids to the Big Ten, SEC, adding revenue for the schools. But if you look at last season, we have Michigan and Minnesota. I think they're 8-4 overall, tied for 7th in the Big Ten, and they would have gotten in. And then you'd have Alabama, LSU, South Carolina. They were 9-4 overall and probably would have made it. Teams that you wouldn't probably think that might not have been the most playoff worthy. Right now, there's discussions about expanding to 14, 16 teams. But when you go to all the way to 24, 28, could dilute the quality of the playoffs. With that said, the FCS has a model similar to that. Seems to be working pretty well with the top teams getting buys and hosting games on their campuses. You also have to consider the impact on teams outside the Power Four conferences and even in independent teams like Notre Dame, things like that.
Yeah, Notre Dame might make it easier if they went into the ACC. But Justin, last word on this topic is for you. What do you think?
I hate the idea, to be honest.
Okay.
I think 16 maybe would work, but 28 is way too much. I still remember the old BCS days and the computers and everything like that. So at least we have an actual championship. But at the same time, it really diminishes the bowl games and the tradition of the bowl game. So I would not be a proponent of this.
All right. Last season, Justin and yours truly, I'm proud to say, we correctly selected that the Ohio State was going to lift the CFP championship trophy. Scott was in on Oregon, and the Ducks were number one for much of the season. Mike went with Georgia. What are we looking at this year, fellas? I'll start. My son, he went to LSU, so the other big game on opening week is the Battle of the Death Valley Denizens. LSU is traveling to Clemson. They met in the 2020 championship games with the Wright Tigers, the ones from Baton Rouge. They prevailed, thankfully. I say the winner of this game could win the national championship. Scott, who are you looking for?
I'm going to go with Texas. It would be very exciting, and I think that they have the best shot.
All right. Justin, how about you?
I'd love to say my Sun Devils, but I think I'm going to have to go with Penn State. I think it stays in the Big Ten.
And Mike, last pick for you here.
Yeah, like Scott mentioned at the top, I'm going to say that the winner of the Texas-Ohio State game in the opening week is going to take home the championship this year. Right now, I'm leaning Ohio State with probably the two best players in the country with Jeremiah Smith and Caleb Downs.
There you have it. That concludes this episode of Media Talk. I wanted to let you know that Mike has published a college football preview that touches on a number of these topics and has a lot more with facts and figures. Mike's story is available on Cap IQ Pro. Now I wanted to thank our Kagan guests, Justin, Scott, and Mike, for sharing their knowledge about college footballs and their picks. Appreciate it, guys.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Mike.
This is Mike Reynolds. Thanks for listening today, and we'll catch up again next week on the September 4th installment of Media Talk when we'll dive into the NFL season ahead.